Good morning, Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats. How's everyone doing? Good. We are live here on Zoom. We're on Facebook. We're on Zoom. I see a bunch of members. I see candidates on Zoom as well. So we've got a lot of good stuff this morning. The first thing we like to do, my name is Brian Hasenbauer. I'm the current Vice President for Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats. I'll be presiding over the meeting today. We've had a change up with our current president, Dale McEwen. He is not feeling well at the moment, so he's not able to attend the meeting. And he's having some health issues. And if you'd like to reach out to his family or talk with one of the executive members to learn more about that, it is a health issue, so it is a privacy thing that we'd like to keep somewhat private out of respect for him and his family. But if you do have a concern for Dale, we are expressing that we do have a concern. Let us know and we can tell you more about it. So the first thing I'd like to do is have everyone rise, and we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, which we haven't been great at doing on Zoom lately. So we'll go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation. All right, thank you so much. So today's program, how it's going to work is we're going to have introductions by candidates because there is a primary going on right now, I think, right? And early voting, and you'll see the voting cards that the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats put together as our endorsements. And I do have to make a apology to one of our candidates where her name was misspelled. So I'll take it on myself as the main proofer that I made that mistake. Elisa Webb, we accidentally spelled her name as Elizabeth. So it's Elisa Webb and Alyssa Webb. And she's running for one of our positions as a judge. So take a look at that. Over the next few weeks or a few days, we'll be putting out endorsements on social media so you can see which candidates, and you can take that postcard with you right into the voting polls like Debbie did the other day, who was next to me when we voted together. So what we'll do today is we'll hear from candidates first. If you are a candidate and you are on Zoom, I'm not sure we're going to be able to have you speak. Unfortunately, I just can't figure out how that is going to work for everyone that's in the audience. So the candidates that are in person will allow them to have up to, we'll say 2 minutes today, since it's a rather small crowd of candidates, which I think is fair. And then after we do that, we'll move into a conversation about justice reform with our current Dallas District Attorney, John Creuzot, who is also on the ballot right now. So and he is our endorsed candidate. This is not a campaign event for John Creuzot. This is to talk about justice reform as a whole. So we'd like to stick with that as much as we can. So get your questions ready. I know it's a hot topic, and I remember hearing John a couple years ago talk to us about that and about how we're taking kids that typically would be arrested for marijuana, and getting them into diversion programs rather than locking them up in the county jail. Things like that really make a big impact, and having a DA that does things like that rather than just incarcerate is a good thing in my opinion. So excited about that conversation. Get your questions ready.
Yes, could you just identify the candidates that are on the Zoom?
That's a great idea. Let me take a look here. So the candidates on Zoom that we currently have, I see Amy Thompson Hollins, who is running for county clerk, district clerk. Trying to look at the whole list here. That is actually the only candidate I see. But thank you for pointing that out.
I'm en route to the location, Brian.
Okay, she's en route to the location. Isn't technology amazing? So once she gets here, we'll go ahead and we'll let her give her a couple minutes. Okay, does that sound good?
Yeah.
Great. All right. Candidates, if you wouldn't mind, if you could come by this way through the area and just give a minute or two about yourselves. We'll let Mr. Curry go first. So come on up. And the camera's right here. speak loudly like I know you want to do and tell everyone about your campaign.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Henry Curry, and I am your endorsed Democratic candidate for Constable Precinct 3. I've served the citizens of Dallas County for 25 years, most recently in the capacity as Assistant Chief at Precinct 2. I stepped down for that position so that I could seek the position as Constable in Precinct 3. I have experience in every facet of the Constable's office. I've been a deputy, a sergeant, training coordinator, I worked civil warrants, writs. I've worked every aspect in the Constable's office. I appreciate having your endorsement, and I would greatly appreciate your vote. Experience does matter in this race. It's very important that we get someone in office in this position that has experience within the Constable's office. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next up is our former vice president of the club. So I have to give it to Kendall and our endorsed candidate for the club. So Kendall Scudder.
Thanks
for 114.
I appreciate it.
Hi, how are you? Thank you guys so much for giving me 2 minutes today. My name is Kendall Scudder. I'm your endorsed candidate for the State House in District 114, which is the new East Dallas district. We have been working our tail ends off since early voting started on Monday, and man, things are looking great. And I just really appreciate all of your support. That's why I wanted to come here. It was not necessarily to plug myself. Y'all have heard from me 1,000 times. I was your vice president last year, but just to thank you guys in person for your confidence. If you're interested in helping out the campaign throughout early voting, we're always looking for poll greeters and folks to help out there. House District 114 is the race everybody's watching, and I've got a really good feeling about our ability to make it into the runoff this cycle. Look, I've been fighting for this party for the last 20 years. Every time that I've been asked to serve, I've stepped up to the plate to do it for this party. I took on Ken Paxton in 2020 when he was trying to take away your right to vote by mail. And you know that I will do the right thing because you've seen me step up to do the right thing for our public schools, for women's reproductive health, every single time that I've been asked to do it. If in the legislature, I will fight tooth and nail for a permanent cost of living adjustment for our retired teachers who haven't gotten a raise since 2007, and even then it was dismal. I'll fight to make sure that your recapture dollars that are taken are actually earmarked for our public schools. $2.7 billion was taken from your public school property tax dollars and not even spent on public schools. Borderline fraud. And I'll fight to make sure that we put a permanent constitutional amendment on the books to ban school vouchers once and for all so that we can stop having to have that fight. The Democrats need to start thinking forward and stop just trying to put the fires out at our feet. What if we 10 years ago had put a permanent constitutional amendment on the books to ban school vouchers? We wouldn't have to be fighting this, right? Let's start fighting tomorrow's fights today. And I hope that you'll give me the opportunity to do that. Thanks again for your vote of confidence in the endorsement. And if there's ever anything that I can do for the club, just because I'm not your vice president anymore, doesn't mean I'm not here to help. Never hesitate to reach out and let me know. Please vote Kendall Scudder for House District 114. Thanks, guys.
Do we have any other candidates in the room? Okay. This is where I remember that I'm actually a candidate now. So I filed recently to run for Dallas City Council in District 10, which is Lake Highlands. I live right next to the Adelia Branch Library, where I saw Debbie voting the other day, and we were reprimanded for talking to each other while we were voting. But I've lived in Lake Highlands for 16 years. I've got 2 kids in RISD schools, kind of grown up watching them go to elementary school, junior high, and now the high school. I've been the Community Development Commissioner for the current councilman for 3 terms. And I've been excited to work beside him on some of the projects he's working on. A lot of people have said that this is not a partisan race, but I disagree about some of the partisanship that's been taking place in city politics and in local school boards, where I think even though we call it nonpartisan, it is partisan. Because we know that the Republicans have set up a strategy to elect school board members and to teach what they want in the classrooms, like Christian nationalism, and to take that and put that into the curriculum. And they want to make it so we don't teach about race relations in America, about CRT and things like that, where that is important discussions that need to happen. So as much as city council is not a partisan race, I'm a Democrat and I'm running for city council and I want your vote. And I think it's important to have those values represented at City Hall, even though we don't discuss abortion and things that are, at the national level. That's what I represent, is the Democratic Party. I want to see your trash get picked up. I want to make sure that those branches are not going to our landfill. I want to make sure they get composted. And I want to make sure the mulch goes back to the neighbors for free. I want to see a commercial recycling program, because if you go to a bar or restaurant and look at the number of aluminum cans, plastic cups, and beer bottles and other bottles that go into the landfill, it's disgraceful. I love it that we all recycle in Dallas and they pick it up every week. But what we do as individuals doesn't even amount to a whole hell of a beans when you look at what the companies do and how they pollute our water and so forth. So that's one of the things. And also looking back at the multifamily recycling programs, we've kind of like given up and lost track of where that is. But all multifamily apartments in Dallas are supposed to have a recycling program. And from what I've heard, it's just not working. We can't even get homes built. We can't even get $1 million homes built, and we certainly can't get affordable houses built. So we need to look at our building codes, and we need to reconstructure that whole housing department, so that way we can build faster, less expensive for the developers, and get more people in homes, especially those that are the most vulnerable, our homeless population. We've got the homeless count coming up on February 24th, I believe, where we're going to go out in the streets and we're going to actually count the number of homeless people. And since we're going through a global pandemic, that number is somewhat high right now, and we do have a lot of encampments. And those encampments need to have outreach, and we need funding for that. And I want to go to City Hall and fight for that funding, so we can make sure that those people on the streets are getting the help they need, so that they can find the homes that we all cherish as either homeowners or long-term renters. So anyway, that's my 2 minutes. So thank you to all the candidates that came. We're going to get into our, yes, Amy's here. So come on up, Amy. She joined us on Zoom. She's doing actually the double hybrid, where she joined us on Zoom and she's like, hey, I'm going to be a minute, and then is here in person. So tell us about your candidates.
Awesome.
Come on up.
And I appreciate Brian from being a great candidate and taking actually 4 minutes instead of 2, just giving me enough time.
There you go.
You guys know
That was planned.
absolutely. You all know that the polls are open right now, and they opened at 7. And I have been at 2 polling locations, had a 9 o'clock meeting, and now I'm here. So, but no excuses. I'm the candidate for change in the Dallas County District Clerk's office. I appreciate the endorsement of Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats and the support on social media that everyone has been lending to my campaign. I'm hoping to bring to the District Clerk's office on January of 2023 a new attitude, a new way to lead, a new way to get production and efficiency out of the District Clerk's office. I'm running for change because it's necessary. I'm running for change because someone has to do it so that the little citizen attached to every little e-filing that is backed up in the current backlog of the District Clerk's office is addressed. We can't have the continuance of leadership who will just move right on into place and choose not to address the issues that could be fixed by innovation, that could be fixed by correctly staffing the right experienced bilingual multicultural employees so that those files can keep it moving all the way to the judiciary, where they will preside and adjudicate the matters and electronically send the information back to the District Clerk's office, where any attorney, any pro se, any everyday citizen like myself or you all in the room can go and get your files electronically and not be held hostage by an 8 to 4:30 system, where a person who has a regular job cannot get anything done. It's electronic input. We have to have electronic output from the District Clerk's office. I'm here to support the Lake Highland White Rock Democrats the way that you have supported me since I began running in August. I ask for your continued support and get to the polls. Don't just get to the polls yourself. Share your slate card that has my name on it. Share some information, a link to my bio, a link to some information about me, not just my name, but the information about me that will lead to the change in the district clerk's office. Amy Thompson Highlands, thank you for your support and your consideration. Brian and Lake Highland, White Rock DM. Thank you.
All right, so that does conclude our candidates. So now, would you like to say something about your candidacy before we get into talking about justice reform?
That is my candidacy.
That is your candidacy.
Yeah.
So go
And we've
ahead.
already endorsed it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I, as a new resident here,
yes.
I don't understand all the criminal law courts. Is that something that is by district, or is it, am I voting for all these?
That's actually a good question for our current district attorney who
Okay.
understands
have
the
your-
judicial system
Sure.
much better than me.
Yeah, I can
Um,
answer that question for you.
Yeah.
So anyway, good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm John Creuzot. As you know, you're a Dallas County District Attorney. I get so accustomed to these sometimes I forget. Oh, fine.
Sure.
I forget that I have them on. So anyway, so the question was about the slate card and about the different courts. So some of these say County Criminal Court at Law number 1. So it's a misdemeanor court. And there's several of them, and they gave them numbers as they created them. Okay, 10 and 11 are dedicated to only family violence. Okay, then you have who are they? Kind of, they're law enforcement officers that do process serving, arrest, etc. Okay, that's who they are. Then you have district judges. Whenever you see district judge and criminal, that is a felony criminal court. Dallas County Court at Law number 1, that's a civil court that almost has exactly the same jurisdiction as a civil district court. So they handle civil matters. Some of these are the 255th, the 256, those are family district courts that handle family law, divorces and property and children and all of that stuff. That's about it. And the clerks do the clerk work. They handle the paperwork and interact with the county, et cetera, et cetera. And district attorney, and the other side, I mean, I'm the top one there, and these others are running for various positions. The county commissioners, they're like the executives of the county. There are 4 of them and a county judge. He's on here, Clay Jenkins. And so that's what that is.
So I vote for all of those.
Individually, yes.
Okay.
Well, if you want to, I hope you
Yes.
vote for me.
Yeah.
I don't know about the rest of them.
Thank you.
I do believe there might be like 1 or 2 of those that aren't on everyone's ballot. Is that right? Like if you're not in the right.
The constables and things like that would be a geographic area. That person may or may not be on your ballot. But all of the judges will be on your ballot.
Okay.
The commissioner may not be on your ballot, depends on where you live. Because that's like quadrants roughly.
JPs.
And JPs, constables, JPs may not be, and the commissioner's court may. I will, county clerk, district clerk, all the judges.
And thank you for the question. It's a
Yeah.
good question. That's one reason why we mail out the endorsement cards is because we want people to take those with them so they know who the majority of the Democrats in their area have kind of backed.
The ballot on there is a new person here. It's just overwhelming me.
Mhm.
I don't know where to go with that.
You have contested races with multiple
Yes.
people, and house races, depends on where you live. Some of these house races have 3 or 4 people, depends on where you live. If you live, I don't know if you live in Congressional District 30, but I don't know, how many, was 8 or 9 candidates on there?
But, yeah.
I mean, yeah, right.
But there was a time when there weren't any Democrats.
Well, that's right, when they had nobody on the ballot. So you're an abundance of riches. And what seems to be a burden is really a responsibility.
I tell you what I did.
As John Kennedy said.
I took this card, I also went out on the web and I looked at our fellow club, the Stonewall Jackson Democrats. All League of Women Voters has a lot of
Yes.
information also. And I just made myself another list of people that we didn't have on our list. I wrote down, and also Dallas Morning News with a grain of salt,
Mhm.
who they took it, and I made my little list, and you can have your cheat sheet at.
There you can.
And one other thing, I would like to point out that we do have our former county chair here. Carol, would you stand up and acknowledge yourself and say hello?
I'm Carol Donovan. I served as county chair of the Democratic Party from 2015 to June 2021.
Thank you.
And I'm here because I'm a member of this club. It's my home club. And because I am a big fan of John Creuzot.
Thank you.
That's a great introduction.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and have a seat, make it a little more quaint here.
Oh.
and, you
Oh,
know,
this is a
discuss the topic.
Q&A.
It's a Q&A, yeah.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, that's all right. So I've spent probably the past 3 weeks since we decided to do this, thinking about the questions I wanted to ask.
Uh-huh.
But the first question I think is important as a candidate is, tell us about John Creuzot. Like, and you have
Sure.
children and
One child.
Yeah, one child.
I invited him here and he looked in the mirror and saw his hairs and I was.
I hear you on that.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Tell us
So
about
a
yourself.
little bit about me. I mean, I was at SNU the other day and we were doing a talk about public service and private practice. And I've had experience with both, but I started it off by saying that we can go through all of my educational history, accomplishments, and elections, et cetera, et cetera. But when it gets down to really, if I have to ask myself, who am I? I've got to describe it in two ways. It's about two people. One is Angèle Charbonnet Creuzot, my grandmother, and the other one is Sally Coleman, her maiden name and my middle name, Creuzot. And that's my grandmother and my mother. And they probably had the greatest influence on me, my values, example, and getting the snot smacked out of me a few times for doing my usual nonsense that I used to do. And so when I look back on a lot of what I've done, it has a lot to do with them. My grandmother died when I was 21, but I was also very, very close to her. And we lived in New Orleans, and I remember she had a true shotgun house, except the doors, you couldn't look all the way through because the doors moved from one side to the other. But grew up being kind to neighbors and being helpful to neighbors and those in need. I know that my grandfather during the Depression and my brother fed a lot of people in the neighborhood. That was impactful for me because you look back at what I've done with vulnerable populations. And when I say vulnerable, I don't mean necessarily homeless and mentally ill, but I also mean vulnerable in the sense that race makes you vulnerable to police practices in this country. And so that had a lot to do with the marijuana program and policy. And then, of course, my mother actually got a master's in social work. And before and after that, she was working for social service agencies that dealt with children. And she worked for the Louisiana Department of Public Welfare. And I remember going to homes in the projects, as I recall. And my mother would buy milk and diapers and things, a little bit of money if she could to help a particular family. And so I grew up in that environment. I grew up in a family that when I was 12 opened a business in Houston. It's still open this day. It's a fast food restaurant. And we were right in Third Ward, Houston. And we were between University of Houston and Texas Southern. So got to see and meet a lot of great athletes. I knew Robert Newhouse.
Oh, wow.
the old
Number
cowboy.
44.
Yeah, number 44, when he was in college at UH.
Yeah. Wow.
And there were a lot of athletes between those two that we knew because we were right in between. And so I grew up in that neighborhood and I saw the needs and I saw the life of people. Plus I live right there too. So that's kind of who I am. And that's what forms the basis of how I look at, a lot of what forms the basis of how I look at the world and how I see vulnerable populations. And when offered an opportunity to jump in and help, I do.
So how did you make the transition from being a lawyer, which you were or are, to getting interested in being the DA, and what made that transition for you?
I don't know, I need my head examined. So I started off as a lawyer in 82 to 89, working in the district attorney's office, and I worked in the trial section. And when I left there, I had run grand juries, I had tried capital cases, I had been the chief prosecutor of several courts. And so I got a lot of experience in a relatively short period of time. Then I went into private practice for about 18 months and Ann Richards appointed me. So for those next 21, almost 22 years, I was actually a judge. That's been the majority of my career. And then I retired. I didn't run in 2012. And then I went into private practice up until I won the election and was elected and sworn in on January 1st of 2019. So I've been in and out of, various portions of the criminal justice system. So I've learned a lot. And I think a lot of what I've learned, especially the things that I was exposed to, trained on, and implemented as a judge, has a lot to do with my ability, I think, to appeal to the vast majority of voters.
Seems like you have a wide understanding of the audiences and the system.
I think so, especially with the system. I mean, for example, the question of a death penalty, okay? One of the things that the state has to prove is this person a continuing threat to society? Let's narrow that down. If the person today gets convicted, they're not of capital murder, they're not going to get out of prison. Okay, so the issue is really very narrow, whether they're going to be a continuing threat where in prison. That's loosely defined as society. It's a prison society. Okay, and we don't really ask ourselves that hard question. There's a lot of loosey-goosey, I call it, evidence that's allowed to be put on in those presentations. And so I went back and looked for many of the people who are on death row from Texas. Well, how was I able to do that? You talk about my past, because I used to work with the executive director of Texas Department of Criminal Justice. I have him on my phone. If I call him and ask him anything, he calls me back and gets it to me within a day. So I had a question to show my staff. Are these people really dangerous in prison? Is any real evidence of this? And I can't remember the answer to every one of them, but the vast majority, nothing. Hadn't done a thing. Hadn't done a thing in jail before they were sentenced. And so it begs the question, are we really following that law? Or are we such a death-friendly state that the courts have allowed you to speculate and put on that when you go to prison, there's no telling what will happen. You might get in a fight, you might shank somebody, you might this, you might, well, of course, you do that right out here in the parking lot. Okay, you don't have to go to prison to do that. So it's the ability that those connections and what I've done in the past gave me the opportunity to get right to the person, to get the information, to give it to the staff so they could start thinking about something different.
But what you said kind of makes me think of the basic question of what justice is about. And that's, is it to either punish or is it to rejuvenate and rehabilitate someone?
I need rejuvenation.
Yeah.
Sprinkle
What is your
something
thought
on
on
me.
that? Are we trying to punish criminals for the acts they do?
Both.
And keep them
Depends.
locked up, or do we want people made better and get GEDs in some cases,
Sure.
or college degrees and be productive members of society?
That's a legitimate question. The criminal justice system is going to deal with a first-time offender because they got caught. That doesn't mean it's their first offense. It's the first one. It may be that they have no offense. And we have a lot of people like this. They don't have a prior offense and they probably won't have a second. So it begs the question, how do we treat that person? In fact, we had a CLE training Thursday for the Dallas bar, the lawyers, anybody who wanted to be in on it. In fact, some media on it, where we're talking about a pretrial intervention program that the DA's office is going to run for that first-time felony offender. And what's giving them an opportunity to get the same assessments that they would get if they were on probation, except a lot earlier. And would decide if there's some minimal type things, or if it's a mental health problem, or whatever that we can do to help these people. If so, we're going to take them into the program. If you're on felony probation, that's a minimum of 2 years. Okay, and don't be surprised that you might get smacked with up to 10 years. Just depends on your situation and your case. Okay, but we can, if this is a low-level person who may need nothing to do or something de minimis to do, and we can get them to do it, and we can dismiss the case, then they're not on probation for 2 years. That's the first thing. They don't have a criminal record, even if they're on a deferred adjudication. The most that can happen with that is you can get a non-disclosure, but it's still there. You still have a criminal record. Okay. And we've done what? Made them eligible for an expunction at the end of the statute of limitations period, usually going to be. So we've done a great service. Now, capital murder, raping children, this, that, and the other. I think, and Bruce is here, and Bruce knows my past, and I've always said that we should stop criminalizing these vulnerable populations, okay, to the extent that we can, and focus our resources on the violent criminals. And if we go back and look at the statistics of the office since I've taken over, there's a clear shift in priorities. There's a clear differentiation in the numbers. Okay, I mean, I just take 2018 and 2019, I don't remember the exact numbers, but we tried a certain percentage more murder cases, child abuse, et cetera, all those kind of cases. We have more convictions, fewer acquittals, and somewhere in all of those cases, somebody in the office added it up. I'm assuming they got it right. Somewhere between 13 and 14,000 years in prison. Okay, if you open up yesterday's paper, today's paper, you're going to see that we recently tried somebody who tried to run over some Garland, or I can't remember, maybe anyway, some police officers, and we got a 40-year sentence. You'll also see in today's paper an announcement from our office that a multi-decade-old case has been solved, and the person is alive, the perpetrator, and that person is now in custody. And I think that was a death. So we are very busy trying to keep to our promises. We want to keep those who don't need to be in the system, keep them out and away, gone. But on the other hand, we want to focus our resources on those who are really dangerous and violent, and make a difference in the quality of life in the community by getting them out of it.
Right. And so I believe I read recently that in the national trend is crime is on the uptick.
Yeah.
In Dallas County,
It's not.
crime is going down, but is it contradictory to the fact that we have diversion efforts and we're doing those things?
No.
How does that balance? Explain that.
So I wrote a piece recently, and I don't know, I think if you go to the district attorney's office Facebook page, the district attorney's office, and then you can catch us through medium.com. You just have to click on it you want to follow. We put out a kind of an article about the drop in violent crime in the city of Dallas. And what we did was made a legitimate comparison between my philosophy and what we now know the chief's philosophy to be, Chief Garcia. Okay, this crime rate is going down since he's been in office. It ain't going down in Tarrant County, it's not going down in New Orleans, it's not going down anywhere else, but right here. Okay, what are the parallels between what he's doing and what I'm doing? Data-based, research-based. Okay, whatever we do, it's based on pre-existing research that shows promise. And then we implement it and we monitor it, but we implement it with fidelity because we implement it with the assistance of the researchers who developed it. He has certain researchers, I have one or two others, and then we all work together. They all know each other. Okay, so what we're doing is a data-based approach, implementing evidence-based strategies, monitoring them. And what we're seeing is we're getting improvement. Now, the interesting thing is this crime rate is going down, but the interesting part of the crime rate going down, and here's the most important thing I think you need to take from this: 5% fewer arrests. This idea that you're going to arrest yourself out of violent crime, guess who the arrest numbers are made up of? People of color, in large part, traffic violations, marijuana, go to jail, check off a box. The police chief, after he got here, said what? Anything under 2 ounces or less for recreational purposes, which, by the way, for misdemeanors, 97% of our cases. Let them go. If it meets 3 or 4 things, which align with my 3 or 4 things, he did that. He said, take them in. And we do accept the cases on that, but it's a small number of cases. Okay, so what you see is the alignment of philosophies. And almost, what else did he say? Why did he want to do that with marijuana? To free up resources to respond to 9/11s, to go to emergency calls, to establish a perimeter, to find the bad guy. And what else did he do? Instead of following cars and looking for traffic violations, what else did he say he was going to do? Well, it's kind of the same thing I said I was going to do. Okay, but it's his independent. But you can see the parallel philosophies. He said, we're going to focus on the violent criminal and the crime and the place where it happens. And that's what he's done. And all those places he's focused on, violent crime and other serious crime, has gone down. And so we're the tail end. I think what people don't understand is they blame us for bail bond, bail, whatever they don't like about this thing. We can talk about that. But the DA's office is really the tail end of the criminal justice system. Cases are brought to us, we process them, and we try. What else do we handle? The appeals, post-conviction stuff, this, that. Now, we don't patrol the streets. Okay, so you can really see the idea, this thing that's going around the country about progressive prosecutors causing crime to go up. Number one, crime was going up long before any of us got into office. And number two, when you have a police chief with the right strategy, crime doesn't go up, it goes what? Down. And it happens to be the same philosophical strategy that the DA has, so it works well together. And I think that's why we're getting some of the best results in the nation.
And from my understanding is we're still understaffed in terms of police, where I believe the chief wants an additional 300 or 400.
Maybe, yeah, I haven't kept up with the numbers.
You know, and we're also saying that the rate we pay our officers is a little lower than other counties.
That is true.
Outside of Dallas. So crime rates going down while we have.
Violent crime is going
Violent crime
down,
is going
and
down.
a lot of property crimes, theft and some burglaries. They put it out, and I haven't looked at their dashboard, but yeah, that's
Right.
happening.
So I know some of the rhetoric around back the blue, defund the police. Can you have both? Can you back the blue while you're also saying we should have this changes in
Well,
how we do policing?
depending on what your purpose is. If you just want to get rid of police officers for the heck of it, then I don't know where that gets you. If you're going to reallocate monies to things that make a difference in the quality of life in vulnerable populations, maybe it makes sense. I mean, I don't know. Let me say this to everybody about the whole concept of defund the police. Let me tell you my professional opinion about right here in Dallas County. There is a difference when departments are staffed fully and not fully. Let me tell you that right now. Okay? It makes a difference who the homicide investigator is, his or her background and training before they got there. If you don't have enough and you don't have a pipeline to train, you get untrained people with the most serious cases. That causes us problems sometimes. Okay? If you have somebody, it used to be that they started off on assaults, went to robberies, which included aggravated robberies, maybe sexual assaults, and then they worked their way up into the major cases like murder and capital murder. And the supervisors had all that same background. And I can tell you, in my mind, there was a difference. Okay? People aren't, because of shortages and whatever decisions are made, don't necessarily take that track. And we do see a difference in the amount of workup on a case, the quality of cases that are given. Doesn't matter which department it is. I mean, to me, there's a difference when they say they need more officers. I don't know what they're going to do with them, whether change all of those dynamics. I don't know, but I can tell you from times past when the perception was we had enough officers to today when the perception is we don't. There is a difference in the quality of cases that they're given to us.
Yeah, and I guess sometimes we get tripped up with thinking about officers as just being those that are in a squad car patrol.
Right. They're another
When
base.
it's homicide and so forth. Okay, well, you brought this up, I did.
Okay.
On this next topic. So cash bond reform.
Sure.
Can you educate us about why that is kind of a big issue right now and how that impacts the justice system and reform?
I think in Dallas County that people haven't really paid attention closely to what's been said, but I'm not certain that bail reform has, I feel certain that in large part bail reform has been accomplished in Dallas. Let me put it in the positive, okay? Here's why. There was a lawsuit. The lawsuit has kind of been through the judges to the Fifth Circuit a couple of times, and they most recently had an opinion that kind of flushed most of it away. There's still some other issues, but I'm not sure that those issues are going to make a big difference. But here's what happened. When the lawsuit started, the county took some initiatives. Okay, there was no question. I don't care what anybody says. In my opinion, there's no question that it was formulaic as to what the bond would be. Okay, but everybody's required to have an individual assessment done, and so now we do that. Okay, and we do what's called a risk assessment. Okay, now the risk assessment doesn't say whether somebody will violate the bond. It just guides the judge on conditions of release. That's all it does. Okay. And our jail maximum is 7,000. I think yesterday it was 5,500. Harris County, where they have the most extensive bail reform and more people getting out, their jail is full. And they're shipping people off. Okay. And they hail that as real bail reform, and ours is something short of it. I'm not going to get in that debate, but we seem to be doing pretty good. So, cash bail. You can't get rid of cash bail without amending the Texas Constitution. Okay, you can change some of the conditions and who does it, when they do it, and how long they have, you can do all that stuff. But the bottom line is the Texas Constitution allows bail, cash bail. Now, has cash bail changed in the last few years? Yes, it has. We see people now getting out on $250,000, $500,000, and more bonds that wouldn't have gotten out in the past. Here's what I think happened. I think when we started, the system, actually, let me not say we, the judges, a lot of this is the credit to the judges, county and district judges, about where we are with this, okay, and the county itself. But when we said that we're going to keep all these people in jail for $50, $100, well, all those people get out on PR bonds now or whatever, and then a lot of these marijuana, almost all the marijuana cases that come, we dismiss them if they even bring it. Okay, so that person's never going to have to come to court. So what has happened is that bottom level of $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $2,500 that used to be available to the bondsman is no longer there. So they used to require 10% and some kind of collateral to secure it in case you ran off. Okay. Well, they're not requiring, my understanding, the 10% anymore, something less, and you pay off the balance with interest. And I'm not sure that they're so interested in securing all that anymore, because they're interested in staying in business. And that's what I'm understanding. I'm not a bondsman, I don't know. We have people that get out, make a bond that we haven't seen do that before. And I think the judges in the last few months to a year have adjusted to that in their way of doing it. I think they've raised those bonds up a little more. We did have cases of people, unfortunately, getting out on some fairly low bonds, I would say, and that were set not necessarily by the judges at the courthouse, but we have municipal judges, and they set and go out and commit a new offense. But for the most part, I think you don't see that, you don't hear that, you don't see that in the news anymore. You don't hear that discussed in Dallas County about bail reform and rising crime, because first of all, we have a new police chief, and guess what? Crime rate's going down. Okay, so you can't blame it on that. The other thing is I think when the judges set better conditions and better amounts of bond, some of these people who would get out and commit new offenses in other places where they're doing that, which is actually a small number, but every worst case sounds like everything, right? It's a small number, but we just don't have that anymore here. So you don't really hear a lot about the merits of bail reform today in Dallas County.
So it sounds like a lot of things are going in the right direction in Dallas County.
From my standpoint, yes.
From your standpoint, yeah.
Not everybody agree.
So what would you say is your biggest issue or thing that you feel that the
Challenge maybe right now?
challenge?
Okay, so let's talk about what we said we do and what we do. Okay, just tick them off. This misdemeanor marijuana thing, we said we were going to stop prosecuting those cases. We did. Okay, what did that do? It took the value out of policing and bringing somebody to jail on that. Between that, the hemp law, which meant everything had to be tested at twice the cost before, okay, and COVID-19, all of that together, but certainly the first thing was the policy, and perhaps the most motivating thing, is that today, very few cases, misdemeanor marijuana cases, are brought to us, okay? So we accomplished that. We said, well, we're gonna, on criminal trespass, simple criminal trespass, and we're gonna prosecute the homeless and mentally ill, and we don't, but we want to step further. We have worked with the county, we've worked with Parkland, worked with North Texas Behavioral Health Authority, our office, et cetera. A multi-million-dollar facility is opening up sometime soon. I say sometime soon because they've failed every deadline. You know how construction never happens on time. And so anyway, soon this facility will open up. We have a kind of an agreement, a handshake agreement, so to speak, with the Salvation Army when they build their new campus up in the Northwest to do the same thing there. Okay, we got that. People don't know this, but we've actually, when this facility opens in Oak Cliff, we're going to give DPD $100,000. We've also offered $250,000 to DPD. This was not on my radar, but it is now for right care. Why? A mentally ill person coming in contact with the police is 16 times more likely to end up with something tragic. Okay, so why not get ahead of it? We gave $200,000 to Addison, Carrollton, not 200 each, but total, to Addison, Carrollton, Farmers Branch, Capel to do a mental health assessment. Why? So we can get ahead of it. So we want to monitor that. This is what we've done. We've done some things beyond that. What about the juvenile department. We never talked about the juvenile department in the last campaign, but it's something to talk about now because the county of Dallas is dead last in dispositions. All you got to do is look. And I've always said what it's going to be data oriented. So we went to the state system and saw who's first and who's last. We're dead last, and we've looked around. So we're playing an integral part now in a reassessment or an assessment of the juvenile department, so we can get these cases, get the kids in faster, get whatever they need. We would like to have an assessment of all of their programs in the juvenile department, but that department is run by the county, not by me, so I can't impact that. Okay, we are signing a contract with a national researcher to evaluate, and I'll call it its formal name, the Judge John C. Creuzot treatment facility, a 300-bed thing in Wilmore. It's never been assessed, never been studied, so we're paying for that. You know, and why? Because it's in our best interest that the judges have, that they know what they're doing when they send somebody there. Why? So we want them to be rehabilitated. Why? So they don't come back. We want to reduce recidivism. So, and the pretrial intervention program is something that we're doing now that's just starting. And what do we hope to do? Well, the data show that Dallas County sends more people to prison on technical violations and probation violations than per capita than any other county. We're way high. There are a lot of things we've done. We've changed how we do probation violations. We are trying to keep people from being on probation so they don't become subject to that. They can move on. And so all of these things are things that we're working on, you know, not only today, but for the future. And we're trying to get in these spaces. And when I say about giving money, by the way, so where do I get money from to give $250,000? Drug dealer, pimp, criminal forfeiture money. We have millions of it. We've never invested it in the county. Okay, we're gonna go into these spaces that need some help and need a, you know, you call it priming the pump, so to speak, and get it moving like this facility we have coming. So there are a lot of things out there that we're keeping an eye on. Things that we have targeted to do and that we think will improve the quality of justice and the quality of life in our communities in Dallas.
That's wonderful. And you said one of the words that I like to think about a lot is recidivism.
Yes.
You know, I work for a laser tattoo removal company.
And
we work with a lot of prison
Not
systems.
mine.
We work with a lot of, we work with TJJD, Texas Juvenile Detention System, where juveniles that have tattoos on their face, you know, things that probably would prohibit them from getting a job. And we help
or turn someone
or
off.
turn someone off from hiring them. So we see a lot of that in the justice system, where if you can have someone who's been incarcerated, get those tattoos removed before they get out, their chance of getting a job and, you know, being economically independent is much higher.
Right.
Okay, so I think you guys know John Creuzot now. Do you know who John is? We're not done. Those were my questions that I thought about for a few weeks. And I see Carol Donovan has a question to start us off.
It seems like one of the most emotionally charged areas that falls in your jurisdiction are police shootings. And it seems like there's a group of people who automatically think that the policeman should go to jail. And then there's another group who automatically feels like, oh no, we need to back the blue. And I'm curious as to how do you handle these diverse emotional complaints that are going to hit you no matter what you do?
Right. Well,
Can you restate the question just in case they didn't hear?
yeah, it's about holding police accountable. You know, one group says get them immediately and as hard as you can, and another group says you're a dog for doing it. So, yeah, you know, let me say this about this job. You better have a thick skin. Okay. I turned on Channel 4 a story about a man who on intoxication manslaughter, and it was all about what we did wrong and what I did wrong. We didn't have a damn thing to do with it. Okay. I mean, just the most amazing damn thing I've ever seen. And I called this, I was hooked up to whoever at the station, and he and I went over this, and he says, in fact, some reporter told him it was all wrong. Okay. So I didn't even know who put this together, but that is a hot topic. So here's the deal, is we have to let the law dictate on any case what we go for. Okay. The thing between us and a charge is on a felony case is a grand jury. They may or may not see it our way, okay? And they may do what they want. You remember when Amber Geiger, all the tension in the community as to what the grand jury would do? Okay, well, guess what? There's no less tension in my mind when we send important cases, whether it's a police officer or not there, as to what they'll do. All right, and so I don't have control over that. However, I do have control over doing due diligence. You're a lawyer. Bruce Antonis, I don't know if any other lawyers here or any on. Okay, but due diligence is very important to me. Okay, it means we got all the facts. And not only that, but because I was a judge, I saw cases from the first presentation of evidence all the way through the instructions. So my staff doesn't have that experience. And so I challenged them on the facts of the case and how it's going to look, what's actually going to get in evidence, not what you want to get in, but what the judge is going to let in, okay? And what will the instructions be? And all of the instructions that are favorable, if by the evidence to the defendant. How are you going to overcome that? I challenge them to work all the way through the case before we go forward on any case, but I do that also on police cases. And so, you know, recently we issued warrants and those cases still have to go to grand jury. Do I know what they're going to do? Of course not. Okay. If they get indicted and go to trial, do I know what's going to happen? Of course not. I don't know what's going to happen. But have we done our due diligence? And I can say, yes, I feel that we have on that. And so we go forward. And so we have to base it on facts and law. And there's going to be criticism either way. Some people said, oh, you did that just because you're in a primary. Well, let's debunk that. Okay. Number one, these cases have been going on for a long time. I held 2 press conferences that were fruitful and found out what we needed to find out and some other offenses. Okay. I have a general election opponent. The statute of limitations is up on these cases on May 30th. It's either put up or shut up by May 30th. So it doesn't matter when I file the charges. Somebody can accuse me and would accuse me, especially the Dallas Police Association, of doing what? Doing it just for election purposes. So I'm not going to ever win that argument. But if you notice that I never respond to that nonsense, all that comes up and they come to me, every station and newspaper. What do you have to say? Nothing. Mm-hmm. What do you have to say about this person said this, that? I don't play tit for tat in the newspaper. Okay. And so I'm not going to answer irrational things and it's not going to change. It's not going to change to me what the facts are, whether somebody likes it one way or the other. The facts are what they are. Either we can prove it or not. And so I stand on that foundation when these criticisms about anything come up.
Do you have a follow-up, Carol?
I think you're great.
Says I'm great. You go ahead. I have a follow-up.
I'd like your take on, I moved from a rural Arkansas district into Dallas.
That's a big move.
And
Rural Arkansas to the city of Dallas.
And I don't know where this gun violence is going. I have no
Yeah.
clue. It seems like when I read, every day seems more and more cases. I don't know what the truth of that is or how these people get in trouble. Do you have any knowledge of that or can speak?
Well, I have 40 years of watching. When I was a young prosecutor, people could get shot 3 or 4 times and live because they were shot with a 22. Okay, somewhere in the mid 80s when crack cocaine came in and we had outsiders come in, they brought 9s and 45s and 15 caliber guns and Uzis and something like an Uzi, brought all that in, and then they needed people to watch the corner, so they gave the gun to the kid and it spread it out on the children. And today, and then what is our community? I mean, let's talk about our Texas, especially community. It wants people to get guns. Okay, except they only stop one group to confiscate it. You know, I've jokingly but seriously said, if you were really serious about getting a bunch of guns off the street, you go look for F-150s, 250s, and 350s with white males on them. Instead of pulling over these kids down there, you get. So look, let me tell you, in the summer of 2019, they did 17,000 stops and DPS got 112 guns. They think that's a success. I said, what about all the rest of the people who didn't have a gun? They got jacked by you. It didn't seem to carry any weight. Okay. But so guns have proliferated through our society to become more lethal and more prevalent. And I was recently asked to join a nationwide group of prosecutors to talk about reducing guns and gun violence. And I did, but I haven't had a meeting yet. So maybe in the future, I'll have something to bring back that maybe we can do.
And like you were saying before, you're the tail end of this.
Yes.
So, I mean, the DA's office is going to prosecute any gun charges.
We prosecute gun crimes and we
Yeah.
prosecute, I mean,
So it's not, you know,
Yeah.
it's not like you're turning a blind eye to it and not prosecuting.
no. I mean, by the time the gun crime happened on the street, that's, all we do is get the case. Somebody got shot. You see these capital murders and things, this kid in Garland who they're still looking for. I mean, really? His dad just got indicted, blah, blah, blah. Okay, there's nothing really we can do with any of that because we're not in Garland at 2 a.m. I mean, we're not, okay? And so what we do is take the cases and do our best to prosecute. Not everybody with a gun deserves to go to prison. I mean, first of all, it's a misdemeanor first time. And the way they've changed the gun laws, I mean, damn near anybody can carry a gun under any circumstances now. In fact, it's rather confusing. I haven't quite gotten it all down in my head yet, but you know, they rushed it through, they did some things, but basically, you know, if you just want to carry a gun, I mean, a lot of times you can.
Now, in terms of the discretion of the DA's office, though, if, just to set up a scenario, let's say a 19-year-old that lives with their parents takes a gun from their dad or mom and goes and commits a crime. And if the gun wasn't secured, nothing like that, the DA has the discretion to prosecute parents for having a gun in their house that's not secured.
It would be more complicated than that. Just what you gave, it wouldn't be anything there to prosecute that idea. So we talk about parties to an offense, but they have to bear some responsibility, and just because they had a gun and it was unsecured didn't make them a party to the offense. They have to be actively engaged in its promotion, participation, and be a party to an offense. I know that they have in some other states that filed some charges against parents or a child who did whatever, but I don't know what the facts of those cases are. I don't know what those particular elements of an offense are in those states, and so I don't know.
Okay, so the laws on the books don't,
Not
Go to
just
those.
generally to that,
but you do have the discretion in some
yeah.
cases to be.
I mean, you know, this father was indicted for capital murder. He didn't do the shooting, his son did. He didn't have a gun, his son did. Son did the shooting. And you've seen some of it on TV. And I know a whole lot more. I'm not gonna go into it because it's an indicted case and I'm not allowed to, but I mean, there's a place where we're holding a parent responsible for his son's actions. Now, how to come out of court, I don't know. But the jury thought, and a magistrate issued an arrest warrant for him, and the grand jury has found probable cause. So we're moving along the way, and the case will be resolved in court, I suppose.
Well, didn't they find that the father didn't just drive the kid, but he went first into the building to kind of scope it out and then went back to the car before the kid.
So the question is, the father went in to scope it out before the kid went in. Yeah. Okay. So I can't, you know, there's a lot I know, and then there's a lot I don't know if you know. So obviously you didn't get that from me. It's in the public
Driving to and from. is
domain.
something, Yeah.
Well, depends. I mean, yes, that's a theory. And those are some facts to support that. That's a theory that the father went in and out and blah, blah, blah. And there are a lot of facts at that, what happened in those few minutes, a lot that you may not know about. I don't know what's out in the public domain. I can't talk about pending cases because there's Michael Morton Act says, once you start sharing stuff, you shut up. So I gotta shut up.
Do you have a question or comment?
I had kind of a question, kind of a soapbox.
Okay, a soapbox question. Okay,
But I want to bring it back to a few years ago in the legislative session. A staff member of our district attorney's office, who is still one of your staff members,
okay,
took it upon himself to help to propose legislation to strengthen and to criminalize some aspects of the vote by mail process.
Okay.
He's still.
Somebody in
on-
my office who still works there years ago
He did this and.
criminalized
this-
a vote by
district
mail
attorney
process.
Backed him up
Okay.
in this process. And so what brings that to mind is that yesterday, there was a major news story of Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick putting out a enormous number of applications to vote by mail. And they were all fixed so that upon execution and filling them out and giving your driver's license or social security or all of that that's been added, they had the address where you should send them. Are you acquainted with the story?
No.
You got to read the paper.
Well,
He told him to send it to us, they sent it to the Secretary of State's office. instead of-
He told
oh,
me.
instead of local elections.
And he printed it on the application for it to go to the Secretary of State's office.
As a Marine.
I'm getting to a point.
Uh-huh.
So the Secretary of State had thousands of applications to vote by mail. I'm probably happy to say they were not in our party, right? At least they're over in the other party. But
I wouldn't have
They-
expected that from this story, but good.
they apparently, at first, were going to reject them. And the law says that the application must be mailed to the early vote clerk of the precinct where the voter lives. That's a kind of a summary of it.
Okay,
If not, it gets rejected.
right.
Okay. If it's in the wrong early vote clerk, they're supposed to take 1 day to send it to the proper early vote clerk. But that means if Collin County got it, it's supposed to come to Dallas County.
Right.
Okay,
Or 2 counties away. or whatever.
that's right. So they decided first to reject them. Then they decided to transmit them to the proper counties. So they put them in piles. Well, the legislation written previously says that if you touch an application to vote by mail, and you mail it for the voter, or you transmit it through delivery. Don't tell me you don't know about any of this, because I know you do. You have to sign it as an assistant, even if the only thing you did was pick it up and put it in the mail. So here we've got all the Secretary of State staff who are not the early voter.
Right.
And they're transmitting this to all the counties. Has each one committed a misdemeanor?
I don't know.
I know you don't know. And
Yeah.
that's, and the defense that Dan Patrick and them have said was, oh no, they are an arm of the early vote clerk. Well, everybody knows that that's false shenanigans and make the story of age go along. So my point to you is, if your office before pressed for legislation, maybe they ought to relook at some stuff in your public integrity or whatever it is, the department, and say, maybe some things ought not be criminalized.
Well, that's true. Let me say this. I don't know what DA, you have not identified the person, what
Well, I
DA.
don't want to.
No, that's fine. No, I'm just saying, I don't know who that is. However,
I-
I do know that the staff would, unless they had strong ethical and moral objections to it, would follow those instructions. The fact that the person is there today, I would not promote that kind of scheme, to confuse people, et cetera, and do things like that. So the only way I can get engaged in something like that in the future is our legislators. We can help, we support, and we do get bills passed, many bills from our DA's office, this DA's office now. We get bills passed, but a lot of them have to do with strengthening, clarifying, or Richard Miles Act, making them turn over evidence, blah, 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 Bo's Law, et cetera. a lot of that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, if something like that came to us, which it is not, okay, we would have to take a look at it. But
Well, these ballots, I mean, these applications are landing in Dallas County.
I understand.
Within the last 5 years, the DA's office has secured
Right.
and taken all the ballots under some ballots. And
Right.
these are ads, but
Right.
have taken them under some scenarios
But nothing was ever found to be wrong. I know
and
that.
secured them.
Yeah, so at some point I talked to somebody who was working on those cases and actually 2 or 3 people. And despite all the hoopla around the fact that the DA's office got them and kept them, there was no crime indicated in any of them, so it never went anywhere. And so we do represent the elections department here, by the way. And they have not raised any of this that it has come to me. There's a lot of things that happen down there. We have 250 lawyers, 500 people that I don't know about. I would think I'd know about it, but maybe not. So I don't know of anybody making a complaint about this process or potentially criminal liability if somebody acted innocently. Of course, we would look at the background of the individual and what they were doing at the time as to whether or not it's appropriate to bring criminal charges. If somebody is trying to follow a process that's designed to be confusing, then obviously that begs the question whether they should be prosecuted.
Just pay attention.
Okay, Bruce.
All right, so everybody knows that you've got, your office got the best conviction, integrity, probably,
Okay,
and works. at-
we think we have the
every
best
day,
conviction integrity unit. in the country, yes.
Works real hard to get innocent people out of jail. and
Yes.
See that justice is done. But the dirty little secret is in the party, and all the judges in the county are Democrats, that you have to struggle because there's many people on the bench that really are kind of hostile to exonerations, or at least they're not working with your unit to get wrongfully convicted people set aside. And I don't expect you to name names. I will. We endorse one of them. But can you address what you're trying to do to
Yes.
move the ball forward on Innocence Project work?
So the way the United States works, Texas and across the United States is the default position for criminal justice is to do everything you can to maintain a conviction. Okay? And that takes various forms. That also includes if somebody brings up a credible claim of innocence or could bring up a credible claim of innocence, but doesn't have access to the material, to the facts, to the case file, et cetera, that we have. There are a lot of things that we find out about innocent people who are innocent when they were tried, find it in police files. Okay, so what we've tried to do is have a more far-reaching agreement with the defense. And we've asked the judges to memorialize the agreement by signing off to protect the integrity of it. Because here's the problem. I only have so many people working in that section. But we have many, many lawyers who say, look, I've been dealing with so-and-so, or his family hired me, or her family, or whatever. And they say they're innocent. They said this, that, and the other happened, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe they're not certain. And they say, we want to look at the file, and the file is 20 years old. Well, what we've attempted to do is to have an agreement signed off by the judge. The judge doesn't have to make the agreement, but just that we're going to keep each other in check and not display all this on social media and this, that, and the others to protect the integrity of an investigation. Some judges think that they don't have that authority to do that for various and sundry reasons. That's fine. Sometimes in the past, they've done what's called a writ of habeas corpus, that it's just kind of a framework. It doesn't have a lot in it, well, because we don't know what's in it. And sometimes, so the judges said, well, you don't have a real writ. It doesn't have the substance that it requires. True. And so I'm not going to sign this agreement. I'm not going to allow this to go on between you and the defense to see if there's some evidence. Okay, well, that's an interesting proposition. Okay. In my opinion, my personal opinion is, and I know this from personal experience, sometimes these things that are designed to maintain something that might be wrong needs to be nudged aside a little bit. And there needs to be some room for collaboration and cooperation between the defense and the state. Judge doesn't have to get into the middle of it. But some of them are of the opinion that they don't, because it's not fully developed, and well, of course it's not fully developed because we don't know. So here's what we do. We ask the defense to look in these files and do the research. And if they find something that's credible, looks to be credible, then we'll file the real document and move on and have hearings, develop evidence, or whatever it is we need to do. Let me give you an example of how this works. So Charles Chapman, Chatman, was in prison, had been there for 27 years, claimed he was innocent. When the DNA law came in, we did some tests that were inconclusive. They had a little bit left. He decided not to have it tested. Let's wait. As time went on, a few years later, a new methodology for testing DNA allowed for the testing of his case. Okay. Nobody filed a motion. Nobody. In fact, everybody forgot about it. I was hearing one case thinking about Charles Chapman. I called up the lab and said, hey, you just came down here in so-and-so's case. Can you do the same thing for Mr. Chapman? He's got a little bit left. They come back, sure, yeah, what do we need to do? Need to get him here anytime. So we did all that, blah, blah, blah. Okay. We didn't have any writs. We didn't have any signed orders. I did it because I remembered. And guess what? They said, well, it'll be about 3 or 4 months before we can get to it. We're so booked up. Okay, fine. Then she calls him back a few days later. She says, you know, I just came and took his swab and I remembered him from before. I'm moving him up to the front, she said. All right. Then she calls me a few days later and says, it's not him. Now, what Bruce is talking about, I violated all kinds of laws and rules of ethics and all kinds of stuff. Okay, but like I said, sometimes you have to nudge that aside to get to the truth. And not everybody's willing to make that nudge is the deal. But we're continuing to work on it, see if we can come up with some way to break the log jam. Not every court is that way, but some are. And that's the way that is.
It's called the do-right test.
The do-right test, yeah.
And we'll go ahead with a couple more questions, and I know the DA has some other things that he has to attend to. Go ahead.
This is not a question. This is
Okay.
a personal experience.
Okay,
Many years ago, you were a judge. I was called jury duty. In the big room,
right.
sitting there with the normal attitude of, oh, God.
How long am I gonna be here? What do I need to say to get out?
And you walked in.
Yeah.
And as you spoke, everything you said made sense. It was logical and it was wonderful. And my whole attitude changes.
Right.
We have judges like this. I'm glad to be here. So thank you so much for all of you have done.
What's the purpose of it? Because let me tell you, and you don't know this like we do, and it's certainly not like a judge does, who's trying cases every week. But, you know, people come up there and there have been times where people have come in the courtroom and intended to disrupt the whole doggone thing. Not just get out of there, disrupt the whole doggone thing. And so to me, it meant a lot as to how that was talked about and prepared downstairs to go upstairs and be collaborative. The other thing, and there are a lot of people who want out of there and they say and do things to get out of there, they're the best jurors. Okay. And so we want a good cross section, but people got to not game it just to get out of it. So thank you.
Well, that's great to hear, because one of the things that I like to talk about is that, you know, government isn't, you know, horrible, it isn't bad. People have bad experiences,
Right.
But if you have government workers or employees or DAs or judges that make it, you know, what it should be, you know, that's what we're looking for in our officials.
Yeah.
So one question on grand juries
Okay.
before we take any additional questions from the audience, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
So I know, you know, Dallas Morning News, a recent article about grand juries.
About recommendations or a sign? They've written about both.
The sign.
Okay.
So I believe there's a sign as you go into the grand jury.
No, if you sit down as a
If
witness,
you sit down as a witness, and it says race may not be,
don't talk about race.
don't talk about race.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? Because
That's the hell
I'm
of
kind
it.
of trying to figure that
I
out.
can't figure out why that's an issue in the Dallas Morning News in 2022. And I told them that. How in the hell? When I got 12 people here every 90 days and I don't know who they are, what their backgrounds are, whether they have implicit unconscious biases or not. Because 99.9% of the people who sit up there and testify are police officers. Okay, and you know yourself, you can't get medical care, you can't get insurance, you can't get a loan from the bank without putting down your sex, your race, your this, that, and the other. But what the hell does that have to do with whether you should be indicted? Okay, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm gonna say it here and right. give it back to them, because I've said it to them. There's one writer for the morning news who calls himself an investigative reporter. And anytime he can find some edge to go after me on something, he does. And he did. Because one person, after 4 decades of my understanding of this being the policy, one person decided to be offended, if she really was. I don't know, I wasn't there, I didn't see it. Okay, let's talk about that sign. Okay, there's enough implicit and unconscious bias out here going on in the criminal justice system long before your case gets to the grand jury, right?
Right.
And we got all these people sitting on the grand jury who we don't know, they come and go. And police officers talk about race and this, because we all do. And we ask them not to. Guess who that has offended and how that started? Grand jurors themselves. The people sitting don't want to hear it. And in today's world, to question that, that's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. Even this editorial, listen, why is this even newsworthy? And so, guess what I asked the morning news? What's your policy about writing about race in the newspaper? Well, we don't do that. Shit, okay, well, let me see. You don't do it because you don't want people to associate whatever with race. And we don't do it because we don't want anybody to be indicted because of race. If you can do it, why can't we do it? If it's good for you, why? It's more consequential over here. Okay, let's talk about recommendations. You know, it came out, which they acted as, which is this interesting thing, how they phrase things, the newspaper, that this was some revelation that in cases involving officers, we didn't make recommendations. I'll be damned. First of all, it's on the website. I put it on the website when I first got in office. It's not a revelation. Number two, if you remember, when Faith Johnson was talking through the Amber Geiger and those other cases back then, what did she say? We don't make recommendations on police officer cases. And that's been forever. But it was brought up, and I thought, okay, we got a very, very small sliver of the population of people who come through the grand jury that don't get a recommendation, and everybody else, most of them with a court-appointed lawyer, don't have a lawyer yet, or whatever, they get a recommendation. So we have two systems going. Okay, so then I backed off of that and I started thinking philosophically. What's the grand jury there for? To stand between the government and the citizen. Who's the government? The DA's office. They're not our tool. Okay, people say, oh, you ought to go recommend. No, they're not. Okay, and so I said, what? We're going to give them the facts, all the facts, and answer any questions. We're not going to make a recommendation. We'll tell them what we think we have or don't have. But we're going to leave it up to them. Now, we're in the early phases of this, but in about a month, I'm going to see what the true bill and no bill rate is. I got a suspicion it's going to be exactly the same. Okay, and I don't understand the criticism of that by the newspaper. But you know what? When I talk to our ministers and our preachers, especially people of color or the average citizen on those two issues, they tell me, why is this an issue? And what does that tell you about some aspects of this paper? And I've told them, I'm telling you the same thing I tell them. Maybe y'all out of tune. Maybe you're out of sync. Maybe you don't understand what people in this community think. And maybe that's why they don't read your doggone newspaper, because of this nonsense. Okay, so I think that I'm well-rounded in my reasons on both of those. The sign's not going away. We're not going to write recommendations. I suspect the outcomes are going to be just about exactly the same. So,
Thank you. Do we have a closing question? Anyone have something burning on their mind?
Ernie.
I know on chat, we did have someone just wanting to confirm the number of lawyers in the DA's office.
About 250. We fluctuate. You know, since COVID, people don't leave like they used to. But we recently have had some people running for office and stuff, and some other retirements.
Sure. So, and how is staffing for you? Are you having a challenge getting lawyers?
No, we have people who want jobs. We have some laterals from other counties that come over. We are not popular. You know, criminal justice reform, when you don't believe in what your office is doing and how it's treating people, we become an attractive place. And so we have a lot of people coming in from other counties, far off. I mean, in Texas, but far off. And so as far as hiring is concerned, we're pretty good.
How's the Texas bar? I mean, don't they have to be
Well, they have to be licensed.
licensed?
Yeah.
How, do you know how the bar compares to us to other states? I mean,
No. In comparison of what?
I mean, like, is being a Texas lawyer prestigious?
Oh, I don't
Or is
know.
our,
Of course it is. I have no idea. I mean, there's so many factors in being a lawyer. The lawyers who practice solo with a small firm, a large firm, or this, that, and the other. And they're government lawyers, they're corporate lawyers who run legal departments. And so it's so varied. I don't know.
And we have a candidate for attorney general who's not licensed in Texas.
I'm sorry, the candidate
We have a candidate for attorney general.
who's not licensed in Texas. Yeah, well, actually, you're not required to be licensed at all.
I understand, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. I don't know.
Great. Do you have any closing words before we?
No, I mean, you know, the question was how do you deal with all this stuff that's come up, and like I said, you have to have a thick skin. I mean, the interesting thing in public life, when I look back at my own, I mean, I've never said an unkind word. You've never heard me say an unkind word about anybody. You never see me go after anybody, go after any group of people. Okay, what you really have seen, let's talk about what you have seen, is somebody who goes to work, keeps his mouth shut, and you'll see me gossiping about people, all that nonsense that goes on. And I try to do things that are effective and make a difference in the quality of life in the community, but yeah, that doesn't always seem to matter, right? But it does seem to matter when the election comes. Okay, and so what I'm gonna do is keep doing what I've been doing. Is if I find areas that need improvement and we can wiggle in there and help in some kind of way, we're gonna do it. Okay, last year, we were in a crisis. We thought we didn't have enough dispositions. That's a whole nother story to merit state funding. And I was on the call every week. I mean, there were things that we needed to do in our office. There were things we needed to help the judges and the coordinators do. There were things that we needed to do in the grand jury. There were things that the police agencies, every one of them, could do to help us get to this magic mark we needed to get to. And we played as much an integral role. What's my point? In the past, some DA's offices said, that ain't my problem. Well, anything that affects the quality of life and the quality of criminal justice and public health, et cetera, in Dallas County, I live here. I live in this neighborhood. It's my problem. It's the office's problem. So we're going to continue to do what we can to serve well and ably and in a manner that you can be proud of. Great. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move into our club meeting portion of the program. Do we have a
Quick announcement, Lake Highlands, White Rock Democrats, proud to announce coffee is ready.
All right.
Thank y'all.
Powered by coffee. That's my slogan.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, John.
Okay. You want any signs? I got some in the
Yeah.
back.
we do have some signs.
You want me to leave them there? Bruce, if you have any left over, just let me know.
Great. So in terms of club business, we
Yes.
typically go through each of our officers and kind of give a quick
Yes.
report. We do have one voting item today. It'll be under new business, and that's our bylaw change. So I will give a quick report as vice president, also as president for Dale. I know Dale in the last executive meeting said he was happy the postcards went out. We sent them out to about 5,200 addresses. I believe we hit all the members as well as the precincts where the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats operate. So we got a lot of postcards out. They went out on February 7th, I believe, was when they started hitting mailboxes. So right around the time, about a week before early voting started. I did mention we did have that one typo. We apologized already to the candidate for that. We'll be continuing to put out endorsement announcements about individual candidates over the next week. In terms of vice president and the next club meeting, we are having it on March 26th, which is 1 week after we normally have it. On the March 19th meeting, it's going to be the Senate district meetings. So you probably should have received an email about registering for that and also registering for the state meeting later in the summer, I believe. So we'll have it on March 26th, and that'll be here, same time, 10 o'clock. We've got an interesting program. We talked about doing something on education. So in terms of education, we don't endorse candidates for school boards and things like that, but we do want everyone to be educated on who is running in the area. So we have, I believe, all 3 of the RISD candidates that are running for school board for Karen Clardy's place where she resigned. I believe it's place 5, if I'm correct. So they'll be here. We'll be discussing education. We did extend an invitation to some of the current school board trustees, but we haven't received any positive feedback about attending yet. I'm not going to get into the discussion on the reasons for not wanting to attend the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats meeting. We'll talk about that personally if you want to ask me about it. Anyway, so we've got that. And then in April, Al Ortiz reminded me that it is Earth Day coming up in April, and we've got a great program to focus on Earth Day. And our community, we're going to have Catherine Balzan, who is the current chair of the Dallas, I believe it's the office of, it's a commission, I always forget what the name of it is. It's the commission that takes care of the CCAP and the environmental side of what Dallas is working on. So it's a new commission. They've only been around a few months, but they're doing some great work on a lot of those topics that we talked about earlier, about landfill and diversion and stuff like that. So that'll be April. And then in May, we've got the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats picnic. Yay! But a quick update on that. We're having to move the location, and Flagpole Hill, you might have been reading in the newspaper and on social media the past few days, is getting the first stages of the renovation started. It was approved several years ago, but they're going to be redoing the entire parking lots, the pavilion, just redoing everything, putting in running trails, all this kind of great stuff. So they've told us that we couldn't be there in May. So we're going to be at the Lake Highlands North Rec Center, using that pavilion and that facility there for the picnic. And then in June, I have no idea. So if you have any thoughts on a great program, let me know and we will do that. Amy?
You have a date for picnic yet?
I believe it's May 16th, the 3rd Saturday. Yep. And we do encourage any candidates that are fortunate enough to make it through the primary process to come on out and talk to the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats and get everyone fired up, because that's May and that'll be going right into the November election there. So very excited about that. It'll be really fun. Hopefully the weather will be good.
What level of these did the postcard go?
What was the question?
What level of these?
I believe we did the last, you had to have voted in the Democratic primary in the last 3 primary elections. So I don't remember if we pulled it by level in Van.
You had to do all 3 of those.
I believe it was 2 out of 3.
2Ds.
Yeah, because when we did it with all 3, the number was smaller than we wanted. So when we expanded it, it got to the number we were trying to reach based on the budget that was approved. And Van is really fun right now, considering all the precincts have changed. So Debbie?
It's May 21st.
May 21st, okay. Is that good for you? Good, good.
What was the number of the bailouts?
I believe it was like 5,000. Yeah, so we tried to get it out to as many people as we could. Dale did express a concern about the cost of it, because it did cost, a good amount of money. So if anyone wants to, add a donation, we would of course appreciate that. But we can use this QR code right here when we're done. Okay, so that's the president's report, vice president's report.
I do have one question. When will the runoff be? Does anyone know the date of the primary runoff?
It's May.
Your race?
May 6th, is that right? But that's 2022. My race is actually 2023. So
Yeah, the runoff is
yeah, but it's like the first week of May.
so early voting started.
Right. Yeah, and that's when the school board election will take place, which is why we want to have the candidates come in March. So yeah, for the May runoff. Okay, so let's move into membership. Judy? And just while Judy's coming up, Tim, who is our treasurer and our PAC secretary, is not able to make it today. He's enjoying some camping and hunting, hopefully, so having a good time. So we won't have a treasurer's or Texas Ethics Commission report. I'll guarantee you it's filed. Everything's good. You want to get in front of the camera so people can see it?
We just hit 249 members.
All right, almost 250. Do we have anyone that's not a member today? So you could be our 250th member? That would be awesome.
Somebody joined today. He just
Yeah?
came, yeah, our
So
rural
is that
Arkansas.
250?
That's 250.
All right.
That's right. No, free coffee.
Great.
Sorry, the coffee's late, y'all. I took, Karen and I took over from Tim, and we had a little problem getting in the building today. It was crazy, kind of crazy.
Yeah, Judy
Happy
called
hour.
me and she's like, hey, I can't get in the building. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, just break a window.
I love John Creuzot, by the way, today. I am so proud to have voted for that man. He is wonderful. Happy hour, also in charge of that. And I moved it out a little bit. We're looking at the end of February, wanted to go back to Olivella's. There seems to be a real popularity there because of the wonderful buy one pizza, get one free and half price wine and so forth. So I moved it out to March 8th. And I've asked Brian to send something out for everybody so we can remind everybody of that date. So hopefully they do have some heaters out there in case we do get a little, never know about Texas weather. But here again, March 8th, Olivella's will be, I'll send out a reminder. 5 to 7, yes, thanks, Rhonda. If anybody wants to pay their dues, I'm certainly taking checks and cash and money orders and anything else. If you have any questions about your membership, and if you owe dues or whatever, please give me a heads up and I'll go home and make sure I get back to you. I made a few calls this week, actually, from people who have asked me where they are on their dues. So please let me know. $25 for a single, $30 for a household. Also, we have a new secretary on board that I found somewhere swimming in a pool, doing water aerobics. And I went, you want to join a Lake Highlands Rock Rock Democrat? And she said, yes.
You only had to hold her head under for a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a Republican?
You wanna do it?
Oh, Lord. She came up with this. We've been doing just kind of the, the destroyable name tags. And Debbie came up with the idea of classing up our act a little bit and making some permanent name tags. If you would like a permanent name tag and you're a member of our club, we've got a little sign-up sheet because Debbie and I were kind of doing it on the fly through the phone and me trying to remember the regulars and are there members and whatever. So we've got a sign-up sheet out there for permanent. Please, if you have a permanent today, could you throw it in the box there that we have? And so we'll just keep them, make sure that they're here for you every month for our meetings.
Great idea.
Okay. And I don't know about y'all, but I love mine. And I expect to wear it to all functions that I go to representing our club. So I really like it. Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it.
I was gonna wear the extra one, but then I thought people might think I'm on early onset.
I was getting ready to say, yeah, you
Alzheimer's,
go.
but I know my name. But,
Well, I'll also take constructive criticism if you have a better idea for how to look.
No, that's
No, we love them. And we did, I think we had some great name tags for the chili supper too that Debbie, you did. So, yeah, Brian did those. That's right. That's right. Any other questions about membership, y'all?
Well, you know, tell them you tried to drown me and got me to join.
That's right. Another person I tried to drown, was kind of had two heads going underneath at the same time.
Well, and that's a great reminder is that we do have some open positions and we are, wanting to make sure that next year we do have, our positions replaced and we don't have people repeating on the executive board. One of those positions that has been important to the club for a long time is Al Ortiz and doing the For the Love of the Lake cleanup. He's going to step aside for that role for now. So we do need someone to help with for the Love of the Lake cleanup.
Debbie, you want to
Um,
do that?
Well, you
Creuzot?
want to do it after the signatures report as part of it.
Okay, yeah, because she's got some
Okay.
new updated
Oh,
information.
perfect. We'll do
about
that under new
yeah.
business. Then.
Any
Um,
other things about membership so I can get off these god awful knees that are killing me because of the weather right now? Anything else?
Well, good job on membership.
Wow. Third year.
Yeah.
Man.
You're finally hitting that pace.
I am.
I like it.
And thank-
Next big number is what, 300?
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
I don't think the club's ever seen 300.
Okay, buy the picnic. Let's get to 300.
Yeah, let's do
That'd be
it.
a good goal. Okay, so that concludes membership. Debbie, would you like to come up and give the secretary's report?
Well, you all,
You can do it from there if you like, either way.
By the way, Brian, I'd like to say, this is our new banner. y'all. We have needed a new banner for a long time. We were here at a function and Brian had it and we had to tape this thing together. And Brian says, I think we need a new banner. And thank you, Brian. You did a wonderful job with that. I think it's absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
And QR code, you can renew your membership just by scanning right there. So nice and easy. And it might even work through the Zoom. If someone wants to do a Zoom scan of the QR code, I don't know, maybe it'll work. Technology is amazing. Thanks, Judy. So Debbie, come on up.
So, people that are here in person, you had copies of the January minutes in your chair. And also a copy of the draft of the executive board meetings, which since I'm new, I didn't understand that those minutes will be approved at our next executive board meeting. But
there were also copies of the December general.
Also,
meeting
yes,
minutes, because we
yes,
didn't-
right, that's right, because December was a party, so yeah, so Rhonda left those, so there's also a copy of your bylaws for the new business later, so you had a whole packet of information. Brian, if those of you have read through the January board meetings, if you had minutes, if you had any corrections. or should we
So
approve those here?
December, we did actually have minutes, correct?
That's true, and Rhonda put them in the
Okay.
chair.
We
So-
just weren't able to vote on them in January, so
Right.
we can approve them today.
Yes, so what I would like to do first is to take a motion to approve the December minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
I was gonna move or I'll second.
Okay, so we have a move to
December.
approve the December minutes. Do we have a second?
She seconded.
Okay, second. Okay, so we have a motion and a movement, a second to approve the minutes for December. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes for December 2021 have been approved and we'll put those, they're currently on the website as unofficial. We'll change them to official. And now we have the January 2022 minutes. If you've had a chance to look at those, that would be great. And those are also on the website as unofficial.
They're long because because it shows everybody that was on the Zoom endorsement meeting. And so you can see those were the tentative results of the endorsement meeting. So
So,
since you've got the postcard now, you kind
yeah,
of
you
know.
can cross-reference them. So we will entertain a motion to approve the January minutes.
I so moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the January 2022 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Okay,
do you have anything else?
not a secretary.
Okay, great, thank you. And just to clarify, so we do take minutes at the executive meetings, and we do post those to the website for full transparency after they're approved. They're unofficial until then sometimes, but we do want to make sure that members know what we're talking about. There is some information we don't include in there, like if we're talking about a member's health, or we're talking about specific people as candidates and things like that shouldn't be discussed in the club, more personal stuff. Okay, well, that concludes the majority of officers. Sunshine report, do we have anything?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Again, just to restate what we said at the beginning of the meeting, Dale McEwen is not here because of a health reason. If you'd like to know how you can help out the family at this time, let one of us know personally, and we'll talk to you about that and what you can do to help. But we do want to wish Dale and his family the best in a challenging time right now. So it's definitely in our thoughts. But, okay, so that ends the reports of the officers. We'll now move into any old business. Do we have any old business that we haven't taken care of at past meetings? Okay, if there's no old business, we'll move on to new business. Let's go ahead and talk about open positions. No, let's not do that. Let's talk about the bylaws first, because the bylaws actually impact positions in a way. So everyone should have a copy of the bylaws as far as the amended version. I don't have a copy in front of me.
Yes.
Okay, so the reason for this change in the bylaws or recommended change in the bylaws, just for clarity, we did publish this on the website and we did notify members at the January meeting that we were going to vote on this because it is in the current bylaws that it has to be posted and notified to the membership within 30 days of voting on it. So by doing that posting and that announcement, we're meeting the bylaws. So the reason for these proposed changes is that we are going to try to consolidate some of the roles. We felt that the treasurer position and the PAC treasurer was somewhat redundant. And I'll explain both those roles just for clarity. So the treasurer of the club currently is Tim. Last year it was Tim as well. And the role is to basically take the money that's been donated out there, make sure it gets into our bank account, take the checks that come in from membership, make sure they're accounted for, pay the expenses, make sure the bank account is balanced, you know, the basic club operations. So the PAC treasurer, which is separate in the past, Dale was performing that function the past 2 years. And that role is to take a look at the club funds and the donations and report that back to the Texas Ethics Commission. Because we are set up as a PAC and it does have Texas Ethics Commission reporting requirements. So the PAC treasurer was taking the club financials, translating them into the Texas Ethics Commission reporting and getting that back. So it's somewhat of an overlapping role. Tim, as being the person responsible as the treasurer, thought that it would be a good idea to merge those two together. So that's the reason for this first change. We also felt that having a communications vice president and an activities vice president would be roles on the executive board that we think would make the club stronger today and tomorrow. And that would help to further put more information on social media, run the club meetings via Zoom, do things with the emails and the website and those type of things, as well as outreach to the community like media relations and things like that. And then on the activity side, you know, taking care of, you know, the chili supper, also the picnic and happy hours. Because right now we're kind of doing that as, you know, the executive team. So we felt having someone specifically tasked with having a team set up to do that and being on the executive team would be good for that. And as you read through here, you know, in section 4, E, F, and G, that kind of details what that is. We also wanted to change membership secretary in 4D to actually membership vice president, which puts it in the same vein as the other positions on the board, I believe. Yes, it does.
It also gave us 7. Did you mention that? So it's an odd number.
Yes, it gives us an odd number. So if there's a, you know, something that's 3 and 3, we'd have a tiebreaker, which is good. Right now, we just wrote rock, paper, scissors for it. So that's the portion, Article 5, officers and their election. And those new roles would be voted on by the membership at a further meeting. The new officers, correct. And then one thing that we wanted to add was Article 6, Section 2, the consideration for approval of unbudgeted expenses of less than $500. We had been operating under that if it was less than $500, we didn't need approval because it was already budgeted, but it wasn't in the bylaws. So we're wanting to make that permanent. And then the candidate endorsement process, we had a meeting 2 years ago when we did the candidate endorsement meeting for the 2020 primaries. And we operated on 50% plus one. And that was actually voted on by the membership, but never made it into the official bylaws. So that's how we did our 2020 endorsements. That's how we did our 2022. But it was never written to the bylaws that that's the way we had voted on doing it. Are there questions about these bylaw changes before we take a motion to approve and so forth? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the bylaws as stated here. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any questions? Because that kind of opens it up for discussion. Okay. Then it's been moved, it's been seconded, there's been no discussion. All in favor of adoption of the bylaws as stated on this document, January 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We will add these to the bylaws and also include this document as a supporting evidence, so that way we know when we changed it. And I like that, I'm sure our secretary did this, wrote presented to membership 01/15/2022, so that way we have it, it's documented that we presented it early. Okay, so that was the only order of new business. Oh, it wasn't you. So that takes care of the bylaws. We do have membership stuff to talk about as far as new positions and things we're trying to do. Debbie, you're gonna come up and talk about that?
At the lake, are you ready?
Yeah, for the Level Lake.
Okay. Want to recognize Al Ortiz again, who has been the chairman of the White Rock Lake Cleanup Committee. This committee, you want to stand, Al, or how long have you been doing it?
Let's see,
Several years.
George Washington.
It's been a long time. Been a long time. But you know, I checked, I am the liaison between Lake Highlands United Methodist Boy Scout Troop 8, or it's just Scout Troop 890 now, and the lake, and I've been doing that for 14 years. So I just was talking to the leadership of the official group For the Love of the Lake, who have an office over at Casa Linda. You know, how long have the Democrats been doing this? And she said, oh, they are charter members in 1996 is when we started having our own section. Okay, it's great. And they now have, our sign is under refurbishment, as are many around the lake. And if you've ever seen them, they're beautiful, wooden, engraved, embossed, what do you do to wood? Burned into, with a symbol of the heart, the For the Love of the Lake symbol, and the group that's doing it. And so it's good advertisement for our club. The section that the Democrats use runs from the Bathhouse Cultural Center to, oh, I forget the name.
Sunset
No, the old Dreyfus Club Point. Remember, the club burned down, but that point is still there. Okay, it's a lovely section. And I can pass these two things around for you so that you can all have a look. This is the big picture of the lake, and this is a blow up of our section. Okay, so the designated cleanup weekend is always the second Saturday. Doesn't conflict with us because we're the third Saturday. Okay, and the requirements are pretty simple. You can drive by the office at Casa Linda and pick up grabbers, or we actually now own 5, and they give you grabbers and gloves, safety gloves, and trash bags. And then you get an email every month and you report how many people helped you. So I'd like to see a show of hands. Anybody else participating in cleanup at our section or at another one? Okay, so we have another sign up list. Well, first of all, I'd like to ask if anybody's interested in becoming the person who all you have to do is show up at the time, the designated time is 9 to 10 on Saturday, the second Saturday of the month. However, such a deal for you. Rather than for the new coordinator having to get participants, I have taken care of that for you. So the group that I do is on the other side of the lake, and it's the Boy Scout, it's the older scouts. But my church also has a Cub Scout pack. And they would be delighted for the service hours to do this for the Democrats every month. So all the coordinator needs to do is to show up and count boys and then report it to the lake every month. So not an easy job. Is anybody today interested, or would you like to think about it? I can't do it because I can't be in two places across the lake at the same time, okay? But on that note, how they're going to do it, because they've got boys and girls now, and many families have, both participating in the one section. They're going to do, or they have people that have young scouts and also have older scouts. They would like to do the cleanup from 10 to 11 on the second Saturday. Okay. So, but again, I'm handing you the manpower or the boy power. All you got to do is show up, make sure they have grabbers and bags and gloves, and count them. Okay. You can actually sit in your car and let them do all the work if you wanted to. Last Saturday, I'll tell you, it was cold, it was snowing, and we had some cubs that showed up without a hat or gloves, and I tied a trash bag around their head like a scarf, and we double gloved, and they made it, more power to them. So, and they still want to continue doing it. So that's a trail by
They bring
far.
them donuts usually, right?
Oh, yes, and
Yeah.
there's that little expense. You should probably bring the donuts.
Yeah.
A dozen donuts covers it.
It covered it. The scouts I did it with my son a few times. for
Yeah,
troop
they'll do
day.
anything for a donut.
Yeah, they'll do anything for a donut.
And the Cub Scout mom, who is kind of going to be your helper here, she is very motivated. She's getting ready to go through a program called Wood Badge, if you're familiar with Scouts. So she's very dedicated, and she will be the one that calls and gets a different Cub Scout den to show up that month. You just have to call her. So easy peasy responsibility.
Okay.
You can let me know afterwards, or
Yeah, if we don't have any takers now, they will dunk you in the pool. coming up,
well,
so-
look at your name is Judy.
I'll search you down and dunk you.
And the neat thing about working with these Cub Scouts, they're so excited about every little piece of trash they get,
So
I found a ball.
So
I
just
found a ball.
and Al, correct me if I'm wrong, but our side of the lake doesn't seem to get as much debris as the side you're cleaning
No,
because of the water.
There's
flow.
not very many reeds. You can actually walk to those steps of the bathhouse and whatever. We also, I'll provide you a pool net. You can get stuff that's actually in the water, but most of it's just on the grass, the grounds,
And if you're out there just on any day, feel free to pick up that area. If you just go out to the bathhouse and walk down there.
That was the lovely
We've
thing.
done
While
that
I was
before.
there, I had not met these Cub Scouts before. We had just talked by phone. So I went up to several people. I found some other groups that were just there. Some other people that were just, oh no, this is what we do. We like doing it. They're not getting service hours for school. They're just there out of the goodness of their heart and caring about nature. So it's the easiest, what I tell the scouts, it's the easiest hour of service you'll ever earn. You're out in nature, you see the ducks and the birds and the, turtles and sometimes snakes, but it's great.
Yeah, for the love of the lake and, the scouts and the volunteers, they do a wonderful job of keeping the lake clean.
Easy.
As a potential city council person, I actually am going to put forth a memo if I am on council to get booms set up at the entrance of White Rock Creek. So that way, any bottles, which are the number one traffic thing, styrofoam, I'd like to actually see banned in Dallas County and the city of Dallas, where only plastic. And you would have to have an actual receptacle to put the plastic if you sell the plastic. And then the bags, you can't really ban the bags because there's a preemptive thing in the city of Dallas, but you can pass a law saying if you give out bags, you need to have a receptacle to collect them at every location. So if we can get rid of some of the trash, we won't have to have as much trash to pick up. So with those booms, it'll kind of divert the plastic bottles so you can actually clean them easily. And in the city of Fort Worth, they've got something really cool. It's an automated trash picker. So the bottles actually go onto a conveyor belt and go right into a sanitation thing, and they can divert it, from the lake. Yeah, Fort Worth does some cool stuff. But
Okay.
talk to Debbie about that. We'll keep the lake cleaned up.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you for your efforts, Al. And so we did talk about having 2 other positions that we're looking for, and that's the Vice President for Communications and the Vice President for Activities. So if we do have members that want to step up and help out with that, and you're not on your own. That's one thing we wanted to make sure everyone knew, is that, you could always ask Al a question or ask Debbie if you were taking this role, just as if you were to do communications or events, you'd still have the entire team to help you. So it's something that we, definitely want
And
to
the
support.
happy hour responsibility is great, y'all.
Yeah.
You get to talk to all these managers and owners of bars and clubs and.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah,
it's great.
Judy's
You get
apparently
right
getting
there.
free wine now from
Yeah,
from
yeah.
all of this. Okay, is there any other new business that we haven't discussed today? Okay, well, then that concludes our meeting. I will take a motion to officially end the meeting today. We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? All right, all in favor of adjourning the meeting at 12:03? Say aye. Any opposed?
Great program,
All right,
Brian.
great. Thanks, everyone, for coming today.
Terrific.
Thank you on Zoom.
Mike Carroll. He's good. He's really good.